Okay, I want you to do something for me right now. It's going to sound incredibly mundane, but just bear with me for a second.
All right, I'm ready.
Wherever you are, just reach out and pretend to grab a cup of coffee, sitting on a table in front of you.
Yeah.
Just extend your arm, wrap your fingers around that imaginary handle, and bring it up.
Okay, done. Simple enough.
Right. To you, to me, to the naked eye, that movement feels seamless. It looks like one smooth, continuous arc. You have an intention, your brain sends a signal, and your hand just, well, it just obeys.
Uh-huh.
But, and this is where things get really wild, if we were to hook you up to the kind of sensors used in the research we're covering today, sensors that record your position 240 times every single second, we wouldn't see a smooth line.
Not at all. We would see a storm.
A storm.
A chaotic storm of micro-movements, tiny little accelerations and decelerations, these invisible jitters that you don't even know you're making.
And usually in traditional neuroscience, that jitter is just called noise. It's treated like static on a radio. It's trash data. The standard practice is literally to smooth it out to see the real movement.
But today, we are looking at a set of research that completely flips that assumption on its head. We're diving into work that asks a really fundamental question. What if that noise isn't trash at all?
What if that noise is actually the most accurate biological marker for autism we've ever found?
And what if that same noise is the key to unlocking agency in children who are nonverbal?
We are looking at a collection of, well, truly groundbreaking papers led by Elizabeth B. Torres, D. Wu, and their colleagues from Rutgers and Indiana University.
We've got two main sources for this. One from 2018 that defines this new biological marker, and then an earlier one from 2013 that tests this radical new therapeutic approach, all based on self-discovery.
So the mission for this deep dive is, I think, pretty clear. We're going to unpack how this noise in your nervous system can predict autism with 95% accuracy, and how a kind of magic box experiment showed that nonverbal children might have way more control than we ever thought.
It's a total reframe. We're moving from looking at autism spectrum disorder, ASD, as a purely behavioral issue, a social psychology thing, to seeing it as a sensory motor issue.
Yeah.
It's about the physics of the nervous system.
So let's start with that diagnostic claim, because 95% accuracy, that's a massive number in psychiatry. Things are usually so much fuzzier.
Oh, they are. And to really get why this is a big deal, you have to think about how autism is diagnosed right now. If you take a toddler for an evaluation, what actually happens?
Well, it's observation, right? You're in a room and a clinician is just watching the child play.
Exactly. They're looking for social deficits. Is the child making eye contact? Are they pointing? Are they doing repetitive behaviors? But the problem is it's inherently subjective.
It depends on who's watching.
It depends on the observer's training, their cultural norms, even just the child's mood that day. And more importantly, these observations describe a symptom, not the cause. They tell us the child isn't making eye contact, but not why, not what's happening in the neurons.
Right. And that's what Wu and Torres wanted to get past. They argued that psychiatry needs objective clinical tests. You can't take a blood test for autism. So they wanted to find something you could actually measure.
So they set up this experiment that seems on the surface incredibly simple. They had participants, some with an ASD diagnosis, some typically developing, sit in front of a touchscreen. And the entire task was just reach out and touch a dot.
That's it. No puzzles, no social interaction.
Just reach and touch. But the magic was in the tech. As you mentioned, high-definition electromagnetic sensors tracking the hand in 3D space, millisecond by millisecond.
Okay, so this brings us back to that noise.
Yeah.
Because normally when you get that kind of data, the line looks all jagged. Hands shake, sensors pick up electrical hum.
Exactly. So standard practice is to apply a smoothing filter. It's like an Instagram filter for data. You smooth out the blemishes, but you lose all the fine detail, all the texture.
And these researchers realize that if you use those standard algorithms, you're literally erasing the physiological signal. You're deleting the very data the nervous system is producing.
Yes. So they developed their own method, a triangular smoothing algorithm. The basic idea is that it filters out the fake noise from electrical interference, but it preserves the sharp peaks of the hand's actual biological movement.
Those are the S peaks they talk about in the paper.
Those are the S peaks. And when they looked at just those preserved peaks, that microscopic shaking, they found the structure of the movement was fundamentally different between the two groups.
And so this is where we get the R parameter. This seems to be the core metric of the whole thing. How should we think about R?
Think of R as a measure of randomness, but more specifically, the predictability of that randomness. So in the mature neurotypical adults, the R value was high.
meaning their micromovements had a structure.
They had a structure. Even though they were shaking a little, it was organized shaking.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like a melody. If you hear 3 notes, your brain can kind of predict the 4th. The nervous system has a memory of what it just did, and that helps it correct what it's about to do.
Okay, and the participants with ASD?
Their signal was memoryless, highly random. The R value was very low. Mathematically, it looked like an exponential distribution, which is basically a coin flip.
Just because you got heads a millisecond ago doesn't mean you'll get tails next.
Exactly. Their nervous system was essentially resetting itself every millisecond. It was unable to use the immediate past to guide the immediate future.
So the noise in a typical brain is a conversation, but the noise in the ASD brain is just static.
That's a perfect analogy. And here's the kicker. Using only this R parameter, ignoring social behavior, eye contact, everything else, they could classify the participants as ASD, or typically developing with 95.45% accuracy.
That's just wild, just from how they reach for a dot.
It's from the micro movements. And there's a developmental angle here that is so important. Because, let's be honest, all toddlers are clumsy.
Laughs. Yeah, coordination is not their strong suit.
Right. And the data shows that. Typically developing kids, ages 3 to 5, they actually start with low R values. Their movements look mathematically very similar to the ASD profile. They're noisy.
So we all start out noisy.
We do. But as typically developing kids get to age 7, then age 10, that R value just skyrockets. Their nervous system matures, it learns how to control the signal.
But the sources say this doesn't happen in the ASD group.
No, it's a plateau. The study found that a 30-year-old with ASD might have the movement signature, that random noise, of a typically developing 4-year-old.
So it's not that the system is broken, it's that it's stalled, a state of arrested development in motor control.
Precisely. And I know some people listening might be thinking, okay, sure, but is this just a motor quirk? Does it actually map onto the autism we know?
Yeah, does the R value actually correlate with functioning in the real world?
It does. They cross-reference the R values with IQ scores and the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scales. The correlation was incredibly strong. The more random the noise, the lower the R value, the lower the IQ and adaptive scores tended to be. It even distinguished between kids labeled high-functioning and low-functioning by their schools.
Okay, that validates it in a big way, but there was a twist in that 2018 paper that I did not see coming. It was about the parents.
Oh, this is the hidden carrier finding. This part is fascinating. So they decided to test the parents of the autistic children. And remember, these parents have no diagnosis. They're considered neurotypical.
Right, they're the control group.
You would think. But when they sat them down at the machine and measured their micro movements, get this, 17 out of 20 parents fell into the ASD region of the R parameter.
Wait, 17 out of 20?
It's statistically overwhelming. Their movement signatures looked almost identical to their own children's and completely different from the other neurotypical adults in the study.
So, wait, they're walking around with the same noisy nervous system, but they don't have the diagnosis. They don't have the social deficits. What does that tell us?
It suggests a very strong hereditary link, what they call the broad autism phenotype. But it also implies something profound about compensation.
It's compensation.
These parents are likely using a massive amount of subconscious effort just to control their noisy bodies. They've learned to mask it, to dampen it manually. They're functioning, but the biological cost, the energy it takes to just move smoothly, it might be incredibly high.
That reframes everything.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if the difference isn't the presence of the noise, but the developed ability to manage it.
Exactly. And that leads us to the human experience of this. I mean, if your nervous system is constantly firing these random signals, what does it feel like to live in that body?
The analogy that really helped me was driving a car with a loose steering wheel.
It's a perfect analogy. You're on the highway. You turn the wheel a tiny bit, but the car doesn't move. You turn it a little more, and suddenly it swerves violently. The wheel is just vibrating in your hands.
That sounds terrifying.
It would be. You'd be white-knuckling it the whole time. You wouldn't be able to look at the scenery, change the radio, or talk to the passenger.
Because you're spending 100% of your brain power just trying to keep the car in its lane. And in this analogy, the social interaction is the passenger talking to you.
Precisely.
Yeah.
This is what they call corrupted sensory feedback. For many people with ASD, they can't rely on proprioception, that internal sense of where your body is. If the feedback from your own arm is just noise, you can't build a reliable map of yourself.
Which would explain the clumsiness, or why some kids need deep pressure just to feel where they are.
Right. But this brings us to the second paper, the 2013 study, because they didn't just want to measure the loose steering wheel. They wanted to see if people could learn to fix it themselves.
The magic box experiment.
Yeah,
And I love this part because it just goes against how we usually do therapy for these kids.
it really does. Usually, if a kid is nonverbal, we use command-based therapy. A therapist grabs their hand, touch your nose, point to the picture,
It's very top-down. We're imposing the movement.
which assumes the child can translate that command into a motor plan. But if the steering wheel is broken, commands don't help. So Torres built this virtual region of interest, or VROY.
The magic box.
The magic box, yeah. So picture a child sitting in front of a screen with sensors on their hand, and there's an invisible zone in the air that they can't see.
And the researchers gave 0 instructions. This is the part that blew my mind. They didn't say, move your hand here. They just let the kid sit there.
They let them explore, and kids move, they stim, they flap, they wave their arm, and just by chance, a hand would cross into that invisible box.
And bam, a cartoon starts playing. SpongeBob or something.
And if the hand leaves the box, the video stops.
So it's a pure feedback loop. My action equals this reaction.
And because they discovered it themselves, because it was driven by their own agency, the brain paid attention in a way it just doesn't with forced therapy. And once they made that connection, their movement data literally transformed.
Transformed how?
They shifted from that chaotic, coin flip, exponential distribution to a structured, predictable gamma distribution.
So they fixed the noise.
They dampened it, they self-organized. The desire to see the video forced their nervous system to find a solution to its own loose steering wheel, and they did it without anyone telling them how.
Which seems to prove the capacity for control is there, it's just unlocked differently. It's not a deficit of intelligence, it's a deficit of feedback.
Absolutely. And the agency part is so critical. We so often strip agency from nonverbal children. We assume we have to drive the car for them. This showed that if you just give them the controls and the right map, they can learn to drive.
And speaking of agency, there was that really poignant detail about what they wanted to watch. They tested different rewards, cartoons like Blue's Clues. But for many of the kids, the most effective reward wasn't a cartoon.
No, it was a live video feed of themselves.
A mirror.
A digital mirror.
Why? Why would seeing yourself work better than SpongeBob?
Think about that sensory disconnect. If you don't really feel where your arm is in space, seeing it move on a screen provides this massive confirmation. I move, the image moves. It closes the feedback loop. It bridges that gap between intent and reality.
There was that example of the nonverbal boy.
Yes. When they played Elmo, he was kind of indifferent. But when the reward was a live video of himself, his behavior completely changed. He spent over 50% of the time in the zone, deliberately holding his hand there to keep the image of himself alive.
He was validating his own existence in space.
Exactly. And there was a girl who loved The Little Mermaid. When they used a generic Disney princess clip, she did okay. But when they used Ariel specifically, her motor control sharpened significantly. The statistical noise dropped.
Which just screams personalization. You can't use a generic reward. You have to find what makes that specific nervous system click.
And here's the best part. The retention. They brought these kids back 2 to 4 weeks later, no practice. And they didn't start from zero.
They remember.
They retained that cleaner, more predictable movement pattern. Their nervous system had recalibrated itself, and it stuck.
That's profound, because it suggests the brain wants to organize itself. We usually see stimming or hand flapping as something to be stopped. Quiet hands, right?
But this research suggests that stimming, what the paper calls spontaneous behavioral variability, is actually the brain casting a net. It's exploring the noise to find a signal. If you suppress that movement, you might be suppressing the learning process itself.
So if we pull this all together, where does it leave us? We have this biomarker, we have hidden signals in parents, we have these self-tuning nervous systems.
I think the big takeaway is that we need to stop looking at autism solely through the lens of psychology. At its root, for many, it's a sensory motor challenge. And we have a potential biomarker, the R parameter, that's objective and accurate. It could help us diagnose kids years earlier.
Imagine catching it at 12 months old, just based on how a baby reaches for a toy. The difference in early intervention would be huge.
Exactly. And on the therapy side, it challenges us to respect autonomy, to stop forcing the movement, build the environment, provide the feedback, and let the brain find its own way.
It's a shift from correction to discovery.
And it validates the individual's experience. That noise isn't trash, it's potential.
And that's the thought I want to leave everyone with. We spend so much time and energy trying to make neurodivergent people look normal by suppressing their noise. But what if that noise is actually the engine of their learning?
We just need to give them the keys.
If we stop saying sit still and start asking, how does your brain need to move to learn? What other capabilities are locked inside nonverbal individuals, just waiting for the right feedback loop?
That's the question that could change everything.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.